Welcome to Axios Church Online. We're so excited you have joined us here on our online campus. We hope this message encourage you and uplift you throughout your week. Enjoy this message.
But I love Christmas. I love Christmas time. I love Christmas movies. I love Hallmark. I love it all. Like, I was talking to somebody today, and I'm like, why is Netflix putting on scary movies right now? Like AI, like all of those things. Like, I want the feel good. I know what to expect. All of the Christmas joy. All of those things. That's what I want. And so I found myself in this predicament when Pastor Eric, Pastor Ryan, and we were all sitting at the table. You know, we plan ahead, like what are we going to be, what movies are we going to do for Christmas at the movies, what are we going to be talking about, all of those things. And so I opened my mouth. I'm like, Arthur Christmas. I love Arthur Christmas. It's underrated. Like, it's so good. And they both looked at me and they're like, great, you're going to do it. I'm like, what? What now? So this is not a part of my message, but be careful when you open your mouth because you'll be doing things you might not necessarily want to be doing. So they told me, they didn't ask me, they just told me like, hey, you're going to do it. What week do you want? I picked kind of right in the middle just in case, I wanted to back out. And there were a couple times this week where Pastor Eric was like, do I need to have something? Are you good? And I said, no, I'm good. I'm going to do it. So this morning we're going to be talking about Arthur Christmas. If you've never seen it, you're missing out. In the movie, you can see the difference even in the preview between Steve, the brother. He's very military, like everything. Like, think Iron Man. He has all the technological stuff. And then you have Arthur, where in the preview you're like, and then there's Arthur. He's a little quirky, weird, different, but he also has the compassion. He has the heart behind Christmas. He's like writing handwritten letters. Like, he's like, this is what it's about. It's not about all of that if we miss the one. And so you see that difference. And as I was, thinking about this movie and what can I tie in biblically to this, like in the Bible, and my head was going 1,000 different directions. First, I was like, well, we could talk about, the 99. He leaves the 99 for the one because we can't forget about the one. We can't forget about that. But then as I started watching the movie again and reading, just the story kept popping back to me. I was like, okay, God, like I feel like it doesn't really relate. I tried to talk myself out of it a bunch of times, but I felt like God said, this is what I want you to talk about. Because as Arthur's story reminds us of something we often wrestle with in our own lives. The tension between efficiency and compassion, between doing things for the sake of success and doing things for the sake of people. This brings us to the story between two very different sisters in the Bible. You have Mary and Martha. Much like Arthur and Steve, they both had their unique roles, and they both were working towards a good goal, but their hearts and priorities were in different places. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So in Luke 10:38 through 42 says, now as they went on their way, Jesus entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. But Martha was distracted by much serving. And she went up to him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me. But the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things. But one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her. Martha was busy with all the preparations, making sure everything was just right, while Mary chose to sit at the feet of Jesus and listen to him. Jesus saw past their actions, and he went straight to the heart. And in his response, he teaches us an important lesson about what truly matters. We can see from this passage, and even the movie, and the heart posture is more than just about your checklist. And that worry and anxiety leaves no room for us to be in his presence. If we're worried about everything, we can miss what truly matters. Has anybody ever experienced, I like to call it the angry clean? Let me explain. So you're sitting down in bed or you're laying down, whatever you're doing, and you look up, and the fan's dirty. You're like, all right, well, I'm going to clean that today because you can't leave that. So you start cleaning that, you get all the stuff out, and then you see something else. You're like, oh, I got to put the clothes away. Those have been there for a while. So you start folding, and then you need something, and so then you're walking, and your foot steps in something, you're like, oh, I need to sweep. So you start sweeping, and then you just start getting mad. You're like, why is my house this dirty? Why are we living in filth? And then you start looking around and you see somebody sitting. And for me, it's usually the kids are arrogant. I'm like, why are you just sitting there? Like, don't you see what we are living in? And the worst is when you have people coming over. You're like cleaning the baseboards. Like, nobody cares about those. I've never walked into somebody's house and been like, look at those baseboards. You guys are gross. I don't do that. But in your head, you're like, we have to get everything perfect. We have to make sure this is done and this is done, because when people come in, they're not just going to be, here. They're going to be judging us. They want to see like, oh, look, she can't keep her house clean. These are the irrational thoughts that go into our heads. And so she was in that. I picture Martha being in that space where she is just in the kitchen, just huffing away. Like, I'm here doing all of this, and then look, there's Mary, just relaxing, getting more and more mad as the time goes on, where she's just cleaning, she's fluffing the pillows, all of those things. She became fixated on everything that needs to be done and not enjoying anything until it's all perfect. So Martha approached Jesus. So he's Jesus. He's got people. Like, you're not only inviting Jesus over, you're inviting all of his friends. You know anybody like that, where you invite somebody over and then there's like 10 more that come with them? And that's okay. Like, I'm expecting that. So Jesus comes over, and all of this is happening, and then Martha approaches Jesus. It doesn't say like, hey, Jesus, can I talk to you over here? Can we go over here for a second? No, it says that she went to him and said, Jesus, do you not see that she's left me alone? Aren't you going to tell her to come help me? So it shows that those were the thoughts that she had. And the thoughts that if she didn't do it this way, she has to do all this perfection. She began to look and fixate on everything that needed to be done first. She began to I'm sorry, I lost my track. Let me get back on it. She began missing it. She was striving for perfection, but she missed what matters most. I know when I begin to worry or stress, when I have too many things on my calendar or my schedule, I can do one of two things. Actually, there's probably a third. The third is the better, but we'll talk about the bad things that I do first. So the first is I live in denial. I disassociate. I'm like, it's not happening. Think of the meme where there's fire all around and there's a dog at the table drinking coffee saying, this is fine. This is a meme that I live by. I'm like, it's fine. I'm not going to think about it. I'm not worried about it. I'm living in denial. And then the second is I spiral. I think about everything. It's either I'm not thinking or I'm thinking about everything, and everything's wrong and all of these things. And then the third, which is the one that I should be doing, is when I feel like the anxiety rising up, I pause and I pray. I say, Jesus, you know my heart. Help me fix my eyes on what truly matters. So whether you're ignoring everything around or drowning in an overwhelmingly worry of it all, I think we all can agree, stress and anxiety often leave us feeling alone. We see in the passage that Martha said, I'm just here all alone. So her worry, everything that she was thinking of, it made her feel alone. She felt like she was facing the world's pressure by herself, like no one really understands or sees what we're going through. But here's the truth. Our God is personal. He doesn't just stand on the outside looking in. He meets us where we are, in the middle of our mess, even the mess that we created with our anxiety and our chaos. Looking at the Bible story, clearly Martha thought Jesus would tell Mary, get up. What are you doing? That's where Martha's headspace was. She's like, I'm going to go and tell on him. That's what my kids do. When somebody's doing something wrong, I'm going to tell, and you're going to get in trouble. They have in their head how we are going to react. And when we don't react that way, they're like, no, wait a second. Well, what do you mean? And I feel like that's where Martha was at. She thought that Jesus would tell Mary, how dare you leave her alone? But instead, Jesus pointed out what was truth. You are anxious and troubled about things, but one thing is necessary. He was intentional with showing her where the real issue was. She was anxious. As I read the story of Mary and Martha, I've always thought that it was strange that Jesus said, Mary, Mary, or Martha, Martha. Like, almost like, Martha, like, you don't get it. Like, the pity, like, what are you doing? Come on. Like, that's where, when I read it, I'm like, oh, she's getting in trouble. Like, those things. However, looking through scripture, I noticed that that's not common. It's not common to hear a name back to back like that. So I was starting to dig in, like researching that. So saying a name twice is actually showing intention and intimacy. Jesus was being intentional with Martha, getting her attention, drawing her in. The few times that I saw in the Bible, the first one was Abraham, where it's Abraham, Abraham, when he was bringing his son up to sacrifice him because that's what God told him to do. He heard his name. And so he looked, and there was another sacrifice given. You see Jacob, when he was afraid to go back to Egypt, but his son was there, God told him, no, I'm going to make you a great nation. You see Moses, when he was walking and saw a bush on fire, and he went, and that's when God told him, I want you to help me rescue the Israelites. That's what I want you to do. Or when you see Samuel, the night Samuel learned to discern God's voice, and he became a mouthpiece to God. You saw Simon. Before he denied Jesus, they had an exchange where Jesus was already praying for Simon. And Simon became one of those that we could build our church on. You see Saul. He was persecuting Christians. He was destroying everything. And the Lord met him on the road to Damascus. And his life changed around. And he became a leader of the church. And then you see Martha. He spoke to her busyness and her anxiety. And sometimes I think that we can look past that because all the other ones are so great. Like you're building a mighty nation. You're going and rescuing a whole nation. You're doing all of those things. And then Martha, you're just speaking to her anxiety and busyness. But I think that might be the biggest one. Because when we have all of the worries and all of the things, that's all we're focused on, and we are missing what matters. And when we miss what matters, it can throw everything off of our alignment. It reminds me of the movie Inside Out 2. It's old, so this is not going to be a spoiler alert, okay? So in the end, anxiety has control over the board, right? So anxiety is the type of character that she was nervous about this, so she overthought there, and she overthought there, and she did this, and then this was going to happen, so we had to make sure that we did this, and this has to be perfect because, oh my gosh, they're going to think this. And so then you just see every thought she had spinning around her. That's all she saw was all of the mess, all of the chaos, and nothing else. She only saw her problem, and that was like Martha. Martha only saw all of her worries, all of her concerns, all of her stress. That's all she saw spinning around her until Jesus said, Martha, Martha. He broke her out of that so her focus could be on him. He was giving her stillness and reminding her of the truth. Yes, there are things to do, but you are missing what's important. When Jesus calls her name, it's not about pointing out her mistakes. Sometimes you can take it like that, like of correction. But he was actually drawing her into a deeper understanding of what it truly matters. He's not correcting her, he's inviting her into peace. He's saying, you have all of this, but come here, draw near to me. In Psalms 94:19, in the multitude of my anxieties within me, your comforts delight my soul. Jesus' response to Martha was filled with compassion and comfort. He acknowledged her worries and troubles by gently redirecting her focus to find comfort and joy in his presence. His words, his invitation to bring our anxiety to him, where he exchanges our care and our stress with his peace and support. Now, knowing that God is personal and that he sees us and understands our struggles and calls us by name will mean so much more and than just comforting our anxiety. But we have to embrace our own uniqueness. We tend to divide the sisters into teams. Like, are you a Martha? Like, are you always like stressed out and busy and worried? Are you a Mary? Like, she's so great. She knew to sit at the feet of Jesus. There's these two teams, whether we do it intentionally or not, where you're like, oh, I was like a Martha this day and I'm like a Mary this day. Are you a worker getting things done? Are you sitting on the sidelines? Are you being intentional with your time with Jesus? Are you missing it altogether? When really, we need to take a step back and see that Jesus is in both of these women, not one or the other. We can see Jesus in Mary's responsiveness, We can see that she's relational, that she has a tender heart, and so on. We can also see Jesus in Martha. Martha was bold. Jesus was in the middle of the room, probably talking, and she went and asserted herself there. She had confidence. She was a server. She loved to serve, and she was hospitable. She had passion. Those are all traits of Jesus. So it isn't Mary or Martha. It's Mary and Martha. The key takeaway is that we are called to look more and more like Christ, not more and more like each other. We need to embrace his unique design and trust that he has given us our own giftings. So this week was a struggle. This week was one where I lived in disassociated. I'm like, I don't got to worry about that. It's going to come. And then Eric's like, all right, well, what you going to preach on? I'm like, So, you already have it in your head. You're like, it's going to be easy. And then when I went and sat down at the computer, I'm like, I have nothing to say. What do I even say? And then there was just too much to say. They're like, you could say so much. Everybody needs to know everything. And then I got in my way. I'm like, but I'm not like Eric. Like, he's so charismatic and he's running and jumping. I joked at the first service, I'm with the camera crew. I'm like, you don't have to worry about like doing this. Like, I'll just be here. Like, I don't run. He's like jumping and loud and screaming. I'm like, I'm not him. Like, that's not who I am. People aren't going to want to listen to that. And so I got in that area where you compare. You're in the comparison. Just as Mary was quiet, her quiet devotion was celebrated, Martha's service was honored. We can find fulfillment when we are aligned with God's purpose for our lives. I could have sat in the room and thought to myself, like, oh, I cannot do this. And Eric was ready. We didn't announce it to anybody. I didn't tell anybody. Because if I don't do it, then nobody could be like, what happened? What's going on? So I told him, I'm like, just hang on. It'll be all right. I could have done that. I could have started comparing myself to him and being like, this is not what it was. Instead, this story was brought to my attention where it's like they both were different, but both were important to the story. You need a Martha and you need a Mary. They're both good. Was Martha wrong in that instance? Yeah. Have we all been wrong in that instance? But this story reminds us that Jesus will meet us right there and call you by name and be so intentional with you. And the verse, 1 Corinthians 12:14-20, talks about, even so, the body is not made up of one part, but many. Now, if a foot should say, because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body, it would not be for that reason to stop being a part of the body. And if the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I don't belong to the body, it would not for that reason stop being a part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the sense of hearing be? If the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be? But in fact, God has placed in the parts of the body, every one of them, just as he wanted them to be. If they were all one part, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, but one body. Don't be tempted to devalue yourself and get caught in the lie of comparison. Don't be tempted to look at what somebody else has and devalue what God has placed in the inside of you. You are important. You have giftings. God has designed us so that we are not the same. So it's easy when you get on Instagram and everybody's doing the same thing and they're all wearing the same clothes and they're all doing the same, and you're like, I'm not that. That's not me. And then you could even try to get caught up in it and start to change yourself. Like, well, maybe, like, I'll just start doing this. I'll start acting this way. But you can't, because that's not who God has called you to be. It's something different when you finally find the vein of this is what I'm good at. Like, I like doing this. And then you let it all go to let Jesus use you in that season where you are right there. Instead of when you're trying to put on a coat, it doesn't fit. When you're trying to be something that you're not. Because everybody can see it. You feel uncomfortable in yourself. You're trying to fit a puzzle piece into a place that's not meant to be there. If we were all the same, we would miss out on important moments. If we were all, like the Bible verse said, if we were all eyes, we couldn't hear. You couldn't hear somebody saying that I love you. You couldn't hear somebody crack a joke. You couldn't hear the first laugh of a baby. You wouldn't be able to do that because we are all meant to be different. This is why it's important that you are secure and learn who you are in the eyes of God and not what society thinks about you, but who he has created you to be. My third point is to avoid distractions. Busyness in comparison can lead to focusing on the wrong things. Martha became resentful of the work instead of joining Jesus. Busyness often prevents us from being present with Jesus, not just because we're too busy, but because we've allowed distractions to steal our focus. Martha probably enjoyed hosting. She invited him, so you knew she had to enjoy it. But in that moment, she let the distractions, the worries, all of that take away of the one thing that she enjoyed doing. Christmas morning can be like that as well. I love Christmas. However, Christmas can be the most stressful time of year. You have to go to 100 places. You wake up in the early morning on Christmas morning if you have kids, because they don't sleep. The sun comes up and they're like, presents! And you're like, well, you have to wait until the sun comes up. And then if you come from a Spanish household, you don't go to bed. Like, you just stay up, like, the whole time. Eric's like, well, we didn't do Christmas morning. I'm like, well, but I did. Like, so we just stay up the whole time. So you're tired, all of these things, and then there's wrapping paper everywhere, and then you have like those little triggers where you're like, oh my gosh, like I need it all clean. So when I grew up, my mom would give us trash bags. She's like, all right, when you open, you put it here. Like, these are the rules of Christmas. And sometimes when we do that, we can miss what really matters. If I'm so focused on cleaning up the mess, I'm going to miss who I bought the present for. I bought you that present so I could see your face and your reaction, but I'm so worried about everything else surrounding me that I'm missing what matters most. Martha made her checklist more important than being with and enjoying her guest. In our culture, our schedules are hectic. Some of us have multiple jobs. You have kids' activities, you have chores, you serve at church, you meal plan, you daily decide what are you going to eat for lunch and dinner, like what are we eating? I feel like that's the common thread between fights in our household. We get so hungry, we're like, well, what are we even going to eat? I'm just hungry. You have a social life. We are in a relentless pursuit of productivity and are tempted to measure our worth by how busy we are, how much we accomplish, by how well we meet expectations, or how perfect we can make our lives look on the outside. When we focus on Jesus, the busyness doesn't go away. When we redirect that, it doesn't go away, but it does become manageable because our perspective shifts. Instead of being consumed by worry or the need for perfectionism, we can rest in his peace. In Luke 12:25 says, and which of you by worrying can add 1 hour to his lifespan? When we don't stop to connect with Jesus by reading her word, by praying, meditating, sitting still, the works that we do for him will almost always become meaningless, because at that point we're just doing. We're just doing work to do. And then you become frustrated and aggravated, and I'm just doing all of this and it doesn't even matter. And then you get mad at the church or you get mad at this person, when really it's none of those things. It's the expectations that we place on our life that are so far removed from what really truly matters. We don't have to spend time trying to please Jesus. He already loves us unconditionally. Anyone can work for Jesus and not know him. You can do work. You can come and you can serve and you can do all those things, but not really know who he is. You can be in a room full of people and not know a single person. You have to be intentional. You have to get out of your comfort, get out of that routine, to be intentional. When we become overwhelmed, you can get caught in the compare and complain mindset, the trap of comparison. You notice everything. Your eyes will begin to deceive you because what you see isn't necessarily the truth. Martha only saw Mary and what she wasn't doing. She's not doing all of these things. But she missed what Mary was doing. Mary was doing the one thing that was important. Martha's eyes let her see what her anxiety wanted her to see. Emotions were high, and circumstances stole her joy. All the work and nothing to show but defeat, anxiety, and trouble. Life is not perfect. I know I'm not perfect, but we must let go and let God lead the way. If I try to place all of my worries, I'm worried about my kids, I'm worried about my future. There's a new pandemic maybe on the rise, a new president, new governments. My family is crazy. Like, I have to figure out Christmas and holidays with them, and how are we going to manage all of that? We have to, my kids and their school and their friends, and am I doing a good job as a parent? Am I being who God told me to be? Am I screwing up my kids? Am I doing all of those things? My so-and-so is sick, and I'm worried about that. My bills, my finances, how am I going to pay for everything? And it becomes heavy. It's heavy, and you're trying to walk, and you're trying to go about your routine, and you're trying to do all these things, and this is all I see. Right in front of me is all of my worry, my anxiety, my doubt, and it becomes heavy, and I'm trying to walk, but then when I take my eyes off that, they start slipping, so then I got to look at them again, and I got to keep them straight. And so I'm walking through life, and I'm worried, and I'm stressed, and then I hear, Jessica, you are worried and anxious. And when I hear my name, I try to peek around, but then this gets heavy. I'm like, I don't want to drop it. But the only way for me to fully see what's right in front of me is for me to let it go. Because at the end of the day, none of that matters. It doesn't matter what's in front of me. It doesn't matter of the stress or the worry or tomorrow or the day after that. Because what matters is what Jesus is right in front of me. He is in front of me, leading the way. And when my eyes are on him, all of that is over there. It didn't go away. It's still right here. But I'm not allowing it to walk me through life. I am allowing him to lead the way and saying, okay, I give it all up to you. And you notice when I gave it all up, it all fell to the wayside because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter about your car payment. It doesn't matter about any of those things if you don't have the one that really matters, the one that is holding you. You have to let it go. In Matthew 11:28, Jesus invites us saying, come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. You have to look at those words. I will give you rest. It's not a maybe. It's not tomorrow. It's I will. Give it all up to me, and your soul will find rest. The truth is, we don't have to carry our burdens alone. We don't have to get everything perfect. Jesus offers us something far better than perfection, which is something that we can never attain anyways. He offers us peace. He offers us rest. He offers us a relationship with him that changes everything. So whether you're more like Martha, consumed with tasks and worries, or you're more like Mary, where you're drawn to the feet of Jesus, I encourage you to just be still in his presence. Embrace his unique design for you. And remember that no matter how busy life gets, God is personal. He sees you, he knows you, and he calls you to rest in him. As I close today, I want to ask you, what are you holding on to? What do you need to release to God? Everybody has something. We all have something that we hold on to, whether it's something in our past, whether it's something that happened yesterday, whether it's a personal thing. I found out this week that there is a memory in my brain that I hold on to. It's silly. I was in college. I actually was talking to Bree about it this morning, where I was like, did you ever have to take speech in college? She's like, no, I got out of it. I'm like, oh, lucky. I went, and I remember our professor. It was like a small room. I should not have been as nervous as I was. I psyched myself out. And he was like, you have to remember your speech. You have to. You don't look at your notes. You can't read off your paper. I'm like, okay, I practice and practice. But when I got in that room and when I got in front of those people, I spaced. I didn't remember anything. So I looked at my cards and I was fidgety and my hands were shaking. And as I was talking to Bree today, I was like, that's the moment. That's the lie that I let get into my heart to say, you're not good enough to speak. You don't have anything to say. So we all have something, whether it's insignificant and small, but there's something in your soul that you might be holding on to, a plan that you had that's not aligning up, and you're frustrated, and that's what you see. When they say lift your hands, you see what you thought it would be. God, I'm following you, but for what? I have all of this. But when you fully give it up, say it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I become a mom. It doesn't matter if I become a wife. It doesn't matter if I don't have a single friend. But God, if you are there, I know that I will be fulfilled. I know that you have a plan for me. I know that it's far better than what society wants me to believe. They want me to look over here and think that this is good. But God, I know when I lift it up and I let it fall, and when I'm looking at you, I'm not looking over there, that I'll see who you've called me to be. So I want you to try this week to focus on what matters, to find that thing that's in you that you've never let go, where you tell people, you're like, I let it go. I'm over it. But are you? Are you over it? Does it creep up sometimes? Does it get in your soul where you're like, oh, that's weird, and then you bury it again? I challenge you to bring it to God. Throw up your hands and say, God, I give it to you, and don't pick it up again. Challenge it head on. Because you saw in the Bible story, Jesus was like, Martha, Martha, you're missing it. It's me. I'm the one. That's all. We don't know what happens next. That's how the story ends. And he's not going to take away from Mary. We don't know if she got mad or if she got hurt. And I think that's the beauty of the Bible. Because when you have those questions of God, what do I do? He's going to answer you. He's going to go to your level. He's going to say your name because he's personal and he knows you. I'm going to pray. God, I thank you for everything that you're doing. God, I thank you for the lives that you're touching in this room, God. I pray that as they face those things head on, God, face the things that they didn't even know were there, that God, you begin to work in their life to show them that you have a unique giftings on their life, that you see them, that you know them, that they won't be distracted, but God, that they would pursue a relationship with you. God, I pray all these things in your holy and mighty name. Amen.
Isn't that an amazing message? If you'd like to help partner with us to push this mission forward here in Lakeland, Florida, you can go to axioschurch.com, and in the giving tab, you can give a one-time donation or a recurring gift. We are so thankful for all of you that have decided to join us this morning. We meet every Sunday, and we can't wait to see you next time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, turn on your post notifications, make sure you're tuned in to everything that Axios Church has to offer.